Welcome back, winning season fam. Today, we're in for a treat because we have someone with deep expertise in the automotive industry. She is a trained attorney and executive, a mom, a wife, and a phenomenal human philanthropist. Christine, welcome to the Winning Season podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I hope your audience enjoys our conversation. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic.
I know it is. So I want to walk our community through your bio. When we hear the highlights, it is impressive because you are impressive. And I want to share a little bit of behind the scenes. So you grew up in Michigan, Midwesterner. What does that title Midwesterner mean to you?
Midwesterner. It really, to me, never meant much until I moved to the East Coast into New
Okay.
York. So New York for me as a Midwesterner, if you want to call me that, New York for me is just rush, rush, rush. Everyone has a place to be and they have to be here now. Everyone is just like focused, like forward, kind of has the blinders on. And in the Midwest, it's always we want to stop and we want to have a conversation with everyone. We want to know how things are
Yeah.
going. We want to, yeah, we just want to know the world. We're pretty kind, but more so than Midwestern, I'd call myself a Detroiter. Detroit is my favorite
Okay.
city. Detroit has experienced a phenomenal renaissance over the last probably decade and a half. And my gosh, if you want to experience art, music, place where you can walk around, see history, experience jazz, experience Motown in the heart of Motown.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Phenomenal food and the people. The people, I mean, Detroit has gotten a bad rap, and maybe some of it in the past was deserving, but my goodness, it is an amazing, amazing place.
Agree with you that it is amazing. As you're speaking, it just brought to my memory my very first flight was from New Orleans to Detroit with the connection in Chicago. So
Mhm.
I was a college student dating a guy who was from Detroit, and I spent the holidays with him. And Detroit blew my mind because, to your point, sometimes it gets a bad rap and you don't know all of the magic in the city. And of course, we've all been impacted by music, whether we realize it or not. Hitsville, which is Motown.
Mhm.
So yeah, I have very fond memories of Detroit. The museums, I did not anticipate the richness of that art scene. So thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that memory back. It just brings back a flood of like my young memories of this fun city, which I need to go back because I haven't been back since the Renaissance, the
Yeah.
rebirth.
And it is a beautiful place and hardworking, sincere people.
Oh,
And
oh my
that's
goodness,
where
yes.
I got my start. I mean, I grew up in a town early in life called Pontiac, which was sort of sandwiched between Detroit and Flint. And I know Flint has always gotten, kind of a bad rap for the water and, folks in Flint have also a certain resilience about them. I mean, General Motors was running the city, and when General Motors had to switch directions and left the city of Flint, it left them without a lot of options. And Pontiac was a lot like that too. We had Pontiac Motors, if part of GM, and that was where most people worked in the auto industry. Most people were blue collar. Most people were immigrants and didn't have a college background. And that is what have informed me from a very young age that people want to work hard, people want to make a difference, people want to support each other. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the early 1980s. We were feral. Like, our parents were working and they were gone. So we had to have our own support system and community. And it was several races. You had all of these folks, refugees from Laos and Vietnam, because this is now the end of the Vietnam War, post Vietnam War. And we just did everything we could to support one another. Someone
Truly.
was gonna, someone had mac and cheese. Okay, great. And someone had popsicles and someone had milk and water. And we made the best of honestly what was close to poverty at that point.
I so appreciate you sharing that. In our last conversation, you and I discussed your grandmother and how she was a pillar and example. Can you tell us the story of your grandmother and the impact on your life?
Absolutely. So my grandmother, Vienna Erickson, she spent probably the last half of her life in the city of Pontiac. She was one of the founding board members for Pontiac General Hospital. She was a nurse, and when nursing was no longer an option for her, she became a manager of a government subsidized community where I spent a lot of my youth. And she was someone who I knew her in the years where her health was very much declining. She had some enigma to anyone who met her, which was fantastic. But she had suffered a lot of heart attacks and strokes, but it didn't matter. She got around. She made sure that she showed up to work to help community members, refugees, immigrants, people who didn't have money, make sure that they had housing. And she also supported so many nonprofits. She was a real big supporter of the League of the Blind. And so you can imagine this woman who's who's really in ill health, and all she wanted to do was help people. And that made an impact, seeing that day in and day out.
Yeah.
Closest family member I've ever had. I just hope some way, somehow I can make her proud.
I, what a force that Vienna was. That influence shaped your philanthropy. Growing up in a community with different cultures shaped your philanthropy. And also, we can see the sign behind you, the donate life sign. You're a kidney donor,
I am.
and so is your husband. Can you share that story with the community?
Absolutely. So the kidney donor story, I think if you have not been affected by kidney disease, or someone in your family, it's very common. There are, over 100,000 people in the United States right now waiting for a kidney.
Hmm.
We have two. Can we live without one? We absolutely can, and we can function fully with just one kidney. And living donation, a kidney from a living donor typically lasts about twice as long as that from a deceased donor. So that's why living kidney donation is so important. But I didn't know you could donate to somebody that you weren't related to, because we didn't have the kidney disease in my family, so I wasn't familiar with it.
Yeah.
But I saw a Facebook post one morning at about 4 a.m. And it was a friend of mine who, had a friend, somebody he went to college with, who needed a kidney. And I kind of elbowed my husband and I said, I want to donate a kidney to this person. And I was convinced this is what I was going to do. Like, let's get the information, let's figure out how this works, and let's do it.
Yeah.
And he said, I think I'm going to do that too. Because he's very competitive. So
Yeah.
he'll be outdone by his wife. So we
Like,
went.
you can't outgive me. We're gonna give together. I
Yeah,
love
we're
it.
gonna be. Yeah, we can't outdo each other's like generosity. It's a great dynamic. It really is. So we went and we learned about it. We signed up, we got tested, and he wound up being a better match. We were both good matches, but my husband was a better match than I was. And so the
And this
hospital,
is for the person whose Facebook post you read.
for the Facebook post, absolutely. And so, the hospital system said, thank you very much for your willingness, but we're going to move forward with your husband. And I said, but wait a minute, somebody must need a kidney.
Hmm.
And this particular hospital system had always done directed donations, meaning you, Kristine, say, I'm going to donate to John, and you and John know each other, and that's a directed donation. A non directed donation is where I, Kristine, want to donate a kidney to somebody, just find a person.
Hmm.
And the hospital was sort of intrigued by how much I had learned about this and my conviction. So they asked me, do you want to go into a national program where basically the first person who matches you, that's who you donate to? Or would you like to possibly impact someone here in Metro Detroit? They have a program of a sub program of individuals who are highly sensitized. So over their lifetimes, they've developed so many antibodies that they only have maybe a 1 in 1,000 chance of ever finding a match. And if they can't find a match, they can't have a kidney transplant, then they're stuck on dialysis, which is no way to live.
Yeah, and that's been my experience with people with kidney disease. A lot of my family members have lost limbs and have been decades on dialysis. When I was a kid, I thought it was normal because my great grandmother and her siblings, they all went to dialysis treatments and the family would take turns getting them to dialysis appointments. It wasn't until I entered college and I started learning from my friends that that wasn't as common. So, hearing your experience, your entry to that, and then also your conviction to say, I'm going to give is so inspiring. But continue with your story. Tell us what happened next.
Absolutely. So we had a histologist who was working in the background to find someone within their highly sensitized group to match with me. And they found someone and asked that I come in and donate, I think it was at that point, 20 vials of blood. They were going to have this recipient who knew nothing about what was going on also come in and give blood samples. I learned I learned afterwards that the hospital had told him, we just need to update some blood work. So he had no idea there was a matchmaking process going on in the background. And I got a call, I think it was late September of 2019. I got a call that they had found a match.
Hmm.
And all I knew it was that it was a man. That's all I wanted to know. I was so worried that something might go wrong in this process, a very daunting process, that I wanted to keep my identity and my recipient's identity anonymous. I didn't want to know because I didn't want attached a name and a face to this end goal and something went wrong. I would just be devastated. I mean, I just knew from a mental standpoint, no way.
I can't imagine the range of
Yeah,
emotion that comes along with getting tested, potentially matching, and also wanting to protect yourself from even going through the full range of experience should something go wrong. But you move
absolutely.
forward and
Yeah.
you are a match. And then
Yeah.
what happens?
And so they called John. He was in a dialysis chair when he got the call from the hospital. It was his birthday. And they said, we have a living donor who's a match. Are you ready for surgery? And he couldn't believe it because he knew none of this was happening in the background. So on December 18, 2019, I donated a kidney to John. The surgery was incredibly successful, and the recovery is much harder on the donor than the recipient. It's fine. I don't want to discourage anyone from donating, but it does take time for your body to just
Yeah, it's a major
get
organ.
used to it. Absolutely. To kind of heal, and also for your other kidney to pick up the work of your kidney that's now missing. So it's a lengthy recovery. But I remember the day we were supposed to meet, my coordinator looking at me going, are you sure you want to do this? We can do it at a later date when you're out of the hospital. I said, no, I got to do this. And so I walked down the hall into his room, and there was this man sitting upright in his hospital bed, eating a little snack and like holding court. And he's like just the happiest, most jovial human being at that moment. I thought, oh my gosh, I did this.
Yeah.
I did this. And I mean, everything else in the world that I've ever done up until that point and maybe since has made like no difference, no drop in the bucket compared to that in seeing him. And it was such a good match that he's on very minimal medications, and we both have each of our kidneys are operating, functioning at like two kidneys. So we've had no
That is so
incidental health issues from that.
And I can see the thread of your journey in life and your seasons where your grandmother was so fierce and committed to community, and how when you read this post at 4 a.m., there was not a second thought. You're like, I'm doing this. And also, your husband's like, yeah, I'm doing it too. You have this generosity that is embedded in who you are. And I'm so One, I feel so privileged that you and I are connected and I get to have this conversation with you and know your story and introduce you to Winning Season. I also want to talk about your professional life because you're very accomplished. Can you walk us through some of the highlights of your career?
Yes, absolutely. My career has been based on helping people. So I am a licensed attorney in labor and employment law, but I never wanted to work for a law firm. I don't particularly care for lawyers, and I don't care for the lifestyle of the law firm. But being a Detroiter, what do? You go into the automotive industry because everyone works in the automotive industry. And that's where I started in a stamping plant right outside of Detroit. Our population was 70% refugees from the Middle East who were men who were here without their families that were living communally and sending money back to the Middle East to support their families. This was just before 9/11, and I will say the experience of being in this community where they were really just trying to do everything to support each other, to support their families from afar, that had experienced, violence and wars and having to be relocated. It was really very impactful on sort of shaping my worldview from a career standpoint at a very early age. Also, being in a stamping plant, and you're talking about very large presses.
Experience.
Yeah, and this was real life.
Some people may not have an understanding of what a stamping plant is. Can you explain for those folks who are not in the automotive industry what it is?
Sure. So stamping is basically a process where you take, in this case, a piece of metal and you put it between two dies, and the dies come together and it stamps out a part. And in this case, what we were doing was stamping holes in large metal roofs for vehicles, like, say, a Ford F-150 or whatever, wherever you would see a sunroof, we were doing the roof preparation for these vehicles. So now you're talking about raw metal, very sharp edges, a lot of
The
health and
only thing going
safety.
through my head is like, be careful. This can be dangerous.
This is very dangerous.
Yes.
And the plant at the time was having difficulty. There wasn't a lot of good management. There wasn't a lot of good health and safety. So I came in with a new plant manager and a new health and safety manager, and we cleaned the place up. We turned it around. We made it like the shining star of the North American operations, which I'm very proud of. And that was real life. I mean, there were people who, I remember there was a gentleman who was having attendance issues because he couldn't find maybe childcare and a lot of family issues. But there was one day he would have been fired had he gotten missed another day of work, and he did. And later that day he came in with a police report. His daughter had been shot.
Goodness.
And I mean, of course, we're not you're not losing your job over this, but to see that in real life and then go to maybe a corporate setting where now I'm talking to a group of professionals who are talking about, not really liking one of the funds in their 401k. I mean, just what a juxtaposition.
Complete like different worlds, right?
Yes. So for me, I've always been drawn to the plant floor and to helping the people who are making the product that ensures that the rest of us have jobs and incomes.
A lot of times when we talk about leadership and human centered leader or heart centered leadership, it's exactly what you just described. You have a policy in place to help people, encourage them, hey, stay on the job, don't call out, etc. But you have to be able to look and say, actually, this employee is dealing with extenuating circumstances. This situation happened. And I love that you demonstrate that for us, and you work with executive leaders all the time. When they find themselves in these types of positions, what are you telling leaders from your own experience?
Absolutely. So I find that, when you're talking about executives have a million questions and a million decisions that needed to be made last week.
Right. Always.
And I find that that the more information that you are able to provide a leader in a succinct way, as well as a proposal, I call it leading up, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to come in and say to you, hey, we have this problem. What should we do? I will, if I'm coming into a group of leaders, I would say, so we found this problem. We did this analysis. This is what we have concluded, and we would like to proceed with this. So I, as a leader, hearing this can go yes or no. You want to get to the yes or no, because again, you're dealing with people who have to say yes, no, and don't have time for a lot of questions. And I'll set the table that way. When
Okay.
it comes to people decisions, we cannot just make a yes or no because people are not machines. I
Right.
can't do, a design FEMA on them or a, product FEMA on them. Everyone is individual. Everyone's got a backstory. And as much as we try to create policies that effectuate good people leadership, we we cannot make policies that deal with all of the exceptions.
Yeah.
We have to make a
Okay.
general framework. Here is the sandbox that we can play in.
Yeah.
And it's individual. And that's the sort of difficulty in leadership and the most important part about being a leader. The most important part about being a leader is not being the best engineer, not being the best lawyer, not being the best accountant. It is about being the best ambassador of people.
That is such one of my pillars of my being. And one of the things that I love a lot of things about your story and your leadership. You demonstrate that throughout. You have a business and you help leaders to shatter ceilings, to navigate seasons of expansion, aka transition. Tell us a little bit about your business and some of the services that you provide helping leaders.
Absolutely. So, about 10 months ago, I stepped away from corporate America. I stepped out of the C suite. It was in a pivotal and transformational time. I could feel it in my bones and in my DNA that I needed to do something differently.
Okay.
As much as I love helping people, I needed to find another way to do that. So, from my experience of being the only female in the C suite for a
Yeah.
very male dominated, white, cisgendered, male dominated industry, I said, it wasn't as if somebody gave me a script and a briefcase of information and said, here's how you act in the C suite, or here's how the C suite works. No, I showed up and I had to learn, and I learned a lot of very hard lessons. So I founded Shattered Glass Advisory in order to help folks who have historically been excluded from the C suite to elevate their positioning to get them into the C suite and to be successful in their positioning and influence in the C suite, as well as helping organizations who are now in a transformative period, bringing in new leaders, developing new leaders,
Yeah.
and helping them to make sure that when you have maybe 10 people at the table, and they're all different, they all have different viewpoints, different experiences, different backgrounds, different walks of life, that every one of them is heard,
Mm-hmm.
and every one of them is taken seriously.
And with Shattered Glass Advisory, I'm thinking about the listeners of Winning Season. And I appreciate you, community, because y'all reach out to me and y'all keep me posted on what's going on in your lives. I know a lot of you are in a season of transition. You're unraveling your identity that is attached to a title. And when it comes to Shattered Glass Advisory, they're not only helping you while you're in the seat with the title, they're also helping you in that expansion. Tell us how you're helping leaders. And for the listeners in the Winning Season community, I just want to make sure that you click the link in the show notes and connect on LinkedIn with Kristine. She's a person that's a resource for you, but she's sharing on her LinkedIn so you can continue to add these nuggets to your leadership toolkit. But Kristine, tell us how, like, when their title is taken away and they're trying to figure out who am I now? What value do I add to the world? What the heck's happening to me? How do you swoop in and help them?
That's a great question. And being in transition myself, having moved from corporate and now starting this new venture, and in the middle of all of that, also trying to answer the question, who am I?
Right. I've
And
been
that's
there too.
hard. That's hard because I've got professional C-suite Kristine sitting out here who, has a certain type, but I'm not in the C-suite right now. So that feels odd. And then I've got personal Kristine who loves helping people and is a little bit more rough around the edges, especially with the language at times. How do I marry these two versions of me into one?
Yeah.
And I will say that I have really leveraged this transition to explore who I am. And through that, I've actually been journaling by hand, and I'm turning that into a book that is going to be about,
We're going to get you back on the podcast for the book launch.
thank you. It's about this myriad of emotions and experiences that happen when you're in transition.
Yeah.
And transition is difficult. I know we all face, the financial questions, the oh my gosh, my title was my life, what am I now? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? How do I find the right network? How do I find the jobs that aren't posted? Because the ones that are posted, often there's already a candidate.
Right.
And these are things that, I'm writing about, I'm living through, I have lived through, and I have also helped individuals get through. But my one big piece of advice is if you are in transition, enjoy it. Take this time for
That
yourself.
is so that I have to say, I hear you, but that's so hard
It
because
is so hard. I know.
the point to enjoy it, you're like, and what the heck's happening to me? When am I going to earn money again? Who am I without the title? So, what's the bridge? Because I know you have a formula. What is the bridge from like the worry, anxiety, question marks, who am I, to enjoying that season of transition?
Okay, so my formula, maybe you can take some pieces of it that work for you. My formula is I have a regimented schedule. I have non-negotiables. Every morning I get up, I do a meditation, and I start my day not seeking happiness, but I start my day being happy. That's that is my default. I'm happy. Because if you're going to chase happiness, you're going to be disappointed. And that's exact same sort of lesson of if you're going to chase satisfaction in a job, you're not going to be satisfied. You're going to be really disappointed. You have your own identity, and those, what I call my non-negotiables, the meditation, the journaling, having my first cup of coffee,
Yes.
listening to light music, and then doing my New York Times crossword puzzle. That gets done before anything else gets done.
That morning ritual of journaling, meditation, coffee, crossword puzzle, I'm thankful that you're sharing that because what I'm hearing from our listeners in the community, once that job title goes away and you don't have that routine, locking into a new ritual can be one of the most difficult aspects. And you're saying to us, "Hey, pick up what works for you." But I do find that in my own experience with transitioning seasons, there was an unlock for me that you just mentioned, and that was that I get to choose how my day is going to go. So I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't waiting to see, oh, is something going to happen that's going to make me happy or fulfilled today? I actually had to set that intention. And I'd set it at bedtime the night before. And as soon as I wake up in the morning, today I will be grateful for XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Or today I'm going to, one of my favorite things to say is, blessings and miracles are chasing me down. And so
Love that. That's
then
great.
I'm training my brain to look for, okay, where's the blessing and miracle that they're chasing me down? I just need to be able to open my heart and expand. So you have this morning ritual, which is a great bridge. And what else do you do to help you anchor in and enjoy the season?
So for me, I've been incredibly blessed with Wanderlust.
Oh, okay.
So I've done some traveling, which has been great, and I can also teach you guys lessons on how to like find the best travel with the lowest amount of money. Maybe that's another side venture. But I also make sure that I take time during the day to intentionally network.
Okay.
I take time during the day intentionally to spend with family because when I was in corporate America, I was out of the house 16, 17 hours a day, day after day. And my daughter probably 2 weeks ago looked at me and said, I'm so relieved, Mom. You look so happy. Like, I know that we've had to set a certain budget and things like that because, of course, when you start a business, you're investing more than you're earning.
Right.
But she's like, you would come home. I wouldn't see you in the morning, and you would come home and you would go right to bed, and then you'd be gone by 6 a.m. And that had to be so tough, Mom.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I never thought anyone was observing this. They're like, "Oh, yeah, Mom, she just works." But it was really impactful to sort of hear that from her and the difference that she has seen in me and how I show up, not only for my family, but also for myself.
Right. That, I mean, wow. When you have your young humans to share something so profound and you realize like they're paying attention to everything. Your leadership is not just your words, it's your actions. You have a sign behind you: live, laugh, love. What is the significance of that to you, that phrase, and also that image?
So for me, I know live, laugh, love can be very empowering to folks. But for my kids, they have somehow decided that it's a joke. So I was traveling for work or something once and about a year ago, and they took some Legos and they made a sign on a Lego blocks that says live, laugh, love. And as much as they thought it was funny, haha, I'm like, you know what? That's really not bad advice.
Yeah.
It's really not bad advice. And you can't see it behind me, but right at my office door, there's this little, it's a paper sign that had been covered over to make it, you know, so it would be durable. And it's got the letters DWYSIUD. And that stands for do what you say you will do. So when I open that door, action.
Yeah.
That was given to me by my first boss and my mentor. It hung in his office until he retired. And when he retired, I said, hey, you got to pass on the legacy to someone. And I'm here. So pass it on to me.
We're going to have you back on the podcast to discuss your book. Before we wrap today, what else would you like to share with the winning season community?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Kristine Frost. I'm happy to connect with you and then happy to connect you to others. And one of my favorite things in this world is connecting people. So if there's something I can connect any of your listeners to, I absolutely will. And you can also visit my website, which is shatteredglassadvisory, all one word.com. Fill out the contact form or reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, of course. Well, the link is in the show notes, so we make it easy for you to get to the website and to LinkedIn as well. I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you. Also, I want to thank you. Last week, you connected me with someone after our conversation, And I have some connections that are sitting in my draft that I'm going to send shortly to connect
Beautiful.
you. It's just such a joy to be connected to such an incredible human. I'm looking forward to having many more conversations with you. Winning
As well.
season, continue to emulate excellence.